Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday morning. As part of South Asia Women's Foundation India, we welcome you all to this panel. This panel, like ma'am said, is about the publication we have recently launched, which is called Weaving a New Narrative. It's about stories of women philanthropists who intentionally support causes of gender equity. Here with me on stage is Anuradha Rajan and Shivanjali ji. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel. I would just like to share a little bit about South Asia Women's Foundation India. We are a women's fund. We support organizations led by women and gender non-binary people who are working towards economic resilience building, who are working towards promoting the cause of access to justice. As a women's fund, one of our main focus is to influence philanthropy to move resources for the cause of gender justice. And we do this very intentionally and with a focus that the resources reach where there is the most needed. They are most needed. We also speak to a lot of stakeholders in the ecosystem to understand how they can contribute towards the cause of gender equity. So on that note, Anuradha, I would like to invite you to share a little bit more about what was the idea behind this publication that SOFIN has brought out.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much to the organizers of the literary festival. I think it is really important to bring such publications into a forum like this and take it into mainstream forums and not keep it restricted to typically development forums. So actually, as you have already mentioned, Pooja, we are a women's fund, and really our role is that of an ecosystem builder. And we see our role in strengthening the entire ecosystem around gender funding, ensuring that there is better and more resourcing of gender justice agendas. There is more resourcing of the issue of empowerment of women, empowerment of girls, empowerment of gender non-binary people. So our role is to really try and I would say influence and move resources to that area. So one of the things that we do to play this role of the bridge between non-profit initiatives led by women and non-binary people and the funding community, the role that we play as a bridge over there, one of the strategies we follow is to do a lot of listening and very little talking. And really this book emerged from a process of deep listening. It emerged from a process of listening to what were the gaps in the funding ecosystem around gender. कहाँ पे साधन की कमी है, जहाँ पे पहुँच नहीं बन रही है. And I think what we heard when we did that deep listening from different actors, whether it was philanthropists, whether it was implementers, whether it was intermediary organizations, I think was the fact that there's a need to talk to understand the landscape of women in philanthropy better. We also looked at a lot of interesting research, and I'd just like to quote one piece of research which emerged from Giving Pi, which is a initiative by Dasra that aggregates UHNIs and HNIs, people with lot of wealth. And what that data really shows is that among 210 family philanthropies that Dasra had surveyed, they found that almost in almost 70% of those 210 families, women were highly represented in the philanthropic foundation of those families, and in 54% of those cases, they were also taking a lot of the role in decision making. So that's on the philanthropic side, of family philanthropies. We also found through our research that the amount of funding that goes to women-led organizations directly, intentionally, is actually very low. It's as low as 1.05% of CSR funding between 2014 and 2023, and as low as 0.34% towards gender equality. So obviously women are trying to change the landscape, but a lot more needs to happen. So we felt, let's bring out the voices and experiences of women philanthropists who are giving to this cause to be able to inspire more people, ताकि और लोग उनसे इंस्पायर हो सके, मोटिवेट हो सकें, और जो साधन की जो कमी अब महसूस हो रही है, स्पेशली ऑन इश्यूज ऑफ जेंडर इक्वालिटी, कैन बी रिसोर्स्ड better. So that was really the idea of the book.
Thank you, Anuradha, for taking us through the idea behind this publication. We have captured 10 stories of some amazing women who give to this cause, and we have 2 of them, they could not join us in person, so we have a recording about what made them give, or what was about their journey for when they started in the philanthropic journey. So we would like to play that recording for you all. Before we start the recording, I would just like to say a little bit about the women philanthropists who are in the recording. One of them is Aparna Piramar Raje. Aparna is a writer. She is a speaker and mental health advocate. She brings openness that makes her personal journey into her philanthropy. Her partnerships with organizations like Kranti, Talk to Me, are grounded in trust, patience, and presence. We also have Radhika Raje Gaikwad. Radhika Raje Gaikwad is a writer, a heritage conservationist, and a passionate advocate for gender justice. She works deeply, her work is deeply rooted in her lived experiences, and she supports her family legacy of social responsibility. She is a trustee of Maharani Chimnabai Sri Udyogalay in Baroda, which promotes the cause of women's economic empowerment. Her efforts towards gender non-binary people are led by the first transgender-run cafe called Gazra Cafe, which she started in Baroda. Both of them are joining us through this video recording, and we would like you all to hear their thoughts about their journey in philanthropy. Can we please play the video?
Hi, and welcome. Welcome everybody who is watching this recording. Welcome to this session where we have 2 trailblazing philanthropists, women philanthropists who are trying to change the landscape of what it means to give and how it means to give to the issue of gender. We're delighted to have with us today Radhika Raje Gaikwad and Aparna Piramal. Thank you so much for joining us. And we would really like to spend the next 20 odd minutes understanding more about your philanthropic journey, which has been featured in the publication Weaving a New Narrative. And truly you are weaving a new narrative around what it means to support other women and gender non-binary people in the quest for equality and justice. So I'd like to begin by first understanding a little more from each of you on how your philanthropic journey really began, and what is the kind of worldview or perspective with which you've been engaging in philanthropy. So I would request maybe Radhika to begin sharing how you began your philanthropic journey and what informs that giving that you do, the philanthropy that you do.
Thank you for having me. It's indeed an honor to be part of this book, which has such illustrious women who have contributed over so many years and sectors for gender justice. My whole journey into activism, if I may use that word, began I think as a young girl, because growing up in an IS officer's home, there was always this strong connect with what's happening around, relevant issues, current issues. And at the same time, I was also growing up in a princely background back home in Wakaner, where I come from, as a royal family member. And there I would see my grandmother also doing her bit, being connected with the people, with women. There was a Charkha Kendra she used to run. There was a tailoring department that she used to run. There was, a lot of work happening for girls' education, for widows. My grandfather would take, drive around the town every Sunday, meet with the people, hear their stories. So there was always this connectedness with people at the grassroots level. And because of my education and exposure, there was this deep understanding that I have been granted a platform and a voice, and I can articulate some of the causes which people cannot represent themselves. And I was very fortunate when I got married and came to Baroda. My family, that my married home, was already also doing a lot of work in charity, like most royal families used to do. And the trust that they were running, which was entirely run by the women of the house, it was always the family women who were running this institution since 1914. And it's one of the earliest self-governing women's organizations in India, called Sri Mahani Chinnabai Sri Udyogalaya. So it gave me an avenue to pursue that further, and that's how it began. The Sanstha was already running vocational training courses for lower income group women, and then over time I was able to adapt those classes to make them more relevant, seeing to what the issues were in the urban poor communities. And that's how it's been. We are training them in in tailoring, beauty parlor. We've started courses in driving. And over time, that became the focus for me. We also work closely with the craft sector, because that is also a very unorganized sector where women don't get that true worth. The earnings or the crafts are created by a family, but usually the male member is the one who's earning and gets the credit. So, there are many sectors in which you see gender injustice. And that's how it began. And of course, over time, I also expanded onto the LGBTQI, who also very much come under gender injustice. And that's been my journey so far.
Thank you so much. Just to follow up on that, Radhika, what is the kind of approach or worldview or perspective that informs your philanthropy? Like what is it that you want to see changed in this world? What is informing the way you give to this cause?
I think I feel very strongly, honestly, being a daughter in a very patriarchal setup. We are two sisters, but it was a very patriarchal setup. And for me also, now I can sit back and think that, there was a struggle for me to learn to drive, or get my license, or I was the first girl in my family to work professionally. So one did realize it, because I grew up in a very loving home, a very secure home, happy home. But at the same time, these are such normalized things that one doesn't even realize that you are not getting the same freedom or opportunity as the man. So I think it came from a very personal space. I think a lot of my projects come from my lived experiences. And I feel that whether you come from privilege or you come from without privilege, a lot of lived experiences of women, especially in India, remain constant. So I think that is it. But there is this deep burning desire to see a more equitable society, a more just society, one that has dignity for all. And being a mother of two daughters myself, I think that has been a conscious effort for me. Sustained effort.
Thank you so much, Radhika. That's been amazing. I think what an amazing journey, starting from the personal, placing the personal at the center and growing your work organically from there. And I think, Aparna, I would really like to invite you into this space, because I think in the book you have shared about your own journey and what made you, the causes that resonated with you, based on your own sort of, lived experiences. So would love to hear a little more around what made you get into philanthropic giving, and really what has been the sort of approach or the worldview with which you have engaged with philanthropy.
Thank you, Anuradha, and thank you for having me here. So as I said in the book, there were two influences that were very, very important to me growing up. One was the principal of our school, J.B. Pettit High School for Girls, and the principal was an amazing woman by the name of Shireen Darasha. And I think, she really emphasized to us that we are all women who have been brought up with privilege, and that we really have a responsibility to give back to society. And I think she just said it so often during these very formative years in school that that left a big impression on me. And then later on, as I grew up, I could see my uncle Ajay Piramal, who is a very well-known philanthropist, and I could see that particularly in the last 20 years, that he's built up a foundation, he's supported many organizations, and he does a lot of grassroots level work, going into areas where a lot of people don't want to go. And he has this whole theory of seva bhav, that to give with the spirit of giving is as important as what you're doing. So I think these were a role model that I had in my life, and this kind of ethos that had been instilled in me by my school principal. These were very important aspects of wanting to give. And I also want to say is that I didn't necessarily have a lot of my own personal money to give, because what I was giving was in my personal capacity, and it was fairly limited. So I started off in very, very small ways. Small things like, for example, for my children's birthday parties, quite often I would insist that don't give a gift, but please make a donation to Magic Bus. And then I would take the kids to see how the Magic Bus sessions were being run, because that's something that they could relate to. They could see how children of their age were playing sport, the kind of backgrounds they came from, and they could just get a taste of the real world a little bit through those activities. So that was one thing. The second thing is I started a giving circle alongside for Dasra in my building for a non-profit called Arman, where a group of us all came together, and then we decided to donate some funds collectively. So initially when I was starting, I didn't know which platforms to work with or which causes to start with. So I went for the things that a lot of people go for, which is education and health. I went with supporting very large non-profits like Magic Bus or Arman. And that gave me some confidence that, trying to understand what it's like to be a donor, and to understand the social sector a little bit. I attended a lot of conferences, especially those organized by Dasra, just to educate myself on what people are giving, how they're giving, what is the conversation in this space like. And then eventually I started relying on my lived experience. So as somebody who lives with a serious mental health condition, I have a good understanding of the sector now in mental health, and that's always growing, but I have gone through that journey myself. I'm very passionate about gender justice also, because, for many different reasons, but really it's my experience as a woman. And then as a writer, I really want to support independent writing. So now I look for organizations that sometimes intersect all three. Even if they don't intersect all three, then there are at least one or two of them. And I work very closely with about 3 or 4 different non-profits. One of them that I've worked with for a very long time, probably close to a decade perhaps, is a organization called Kranti, which is currently based in Dharamshala and has set up a very, very interesting program for daughters of sex workers, and really transforming these women and setting up like an academy of social change, which is not, which doesn't really exist anywhere in the world. I think I call it like the Harvard of social change, because they do so much work in mainstreaming people who are really on the outskirts of society and bringing them into the mainstream and making them agents of social change. So it's really one of the first institutions which is, for daughters of sex workers, run by daughters of sex workers. Many of the girls have, grown up and are coming back to support their community and to support this institution. So it's a fantastic organization. I support them with their mental health therapy, and also whenever they need it in terms of their growth strategy and their thinking. So that's mainly what I do. I like to seed fund ideas that I think are ahead of their time and innovative in the area of philanthropy. So I like to think of my philanthropy as being a little bit risk capital, whether it's supporting a performance that's currently playing, actually that's going to be coming to Pune. I think it may have already been there, but in Pune and Mumbai, called Anatomy of a Suicide. So a very cutting edge performance in theater around that, or it's supporting, a fellowship for writing programs, which is one of its first of its kind in India, or supporting a mental health therapy line, counseling line called Talk to Me. So there are a variety of different non-profits that I work with. and the idea is to support new thinking and innovation in this space by being a little bit flexible with the kind of the funding that I do.
So we heard both two women who are featured in the book. There are 8 other amazing stories in this publication, and Shivanjali, here I would like to bring you here in the picture. You have read the publication, and we would really like to know what are your thoughts or the key takeaways you took after reading the publication.
Thank you, Pooja. So before I begin, I just wanted to congratulate Sofin for bringing out this book, because this was definitely much needed. In India, everyone always talks about CSR, and yes, that is big. But philanthropy is actually the main game changer in the development ecosystem, because philanthropists can take up those projects which traditional CSR will not want to touch, because it is politically sensitive, because it's not the in thing, there are a whole host of reasons. And focusing on women philanthropists especially is important, because they're doing amazing work, but I think as women, we're not really used to talking about our work. It is always, let's do the work and then, be happy, but not be out there talking about it. So the fact that you all have actually come up with this book, I really appreciate you for that, because it was much needed. About this book, actually, it was a complete pleasure reading it. There were a few things which stood out. So one was that all the women, they were able to relate their own personal experiences, their lived experiences with other women and communities which were very different from them. So even say for instance, Aparna, her struggles with bipolar disorder was something that she used that to help create those safe spaces, sanctuary spaces, for daughters of commercial sex workers. Helped, focused on intensive therapy. So because therapy had helped her, she was able to relate her experiences to them, even though they came from very, very different backgrounds. So I think, that was very interesting, and it cropped up regularly, throughout the book. Even, the Nari Ki Savari started by Radhika Raje Gaikwad. The fact that, she came from a patriarchal background, privileged, but patriarchal background, where, not being allowed to drive, where she had to struggle to learn, to be allowed to drive. And she then created spaces for women to become, to take up driving as their profession. Women from marginalized groups, used her standing in society to provide them that space, to provide them that protection, and so that they could also break those patriarchal barriers. Having something like a Gazara Cafe for run by transgender individuals. Again, using her space, her social standing to provide those safe spaces for other people to grow. I think continuously, throughout the book, this was like a major theme. Another, which was, very interesting for me, was that, they went with humility. It was, sometimes privilege and education and money breeds this superiority complex that, oh, I know better. I will go and teach somebody, so that I have seen that a lot. But all of these women, they went with humility. They went saying that, okay, I want to learn. They gave that, that respect and ensure mutual dignity between themselves, the community, and the organizations that they were supporting. And that is extremely important, because if you don't have partnerships, genuine partnerships, if you have those power relations between a funder and your grantee or your community, it doesn't really work. And all of them went with that approach of learning from the community. And here one of the people you have profiled, Nandini Rao's model of vulnerable leadership, where not knowing all the answers is actually appreciated. Her saying that moving slowly is actually the way to go ahead, because in CSR, especially for us, everything was due yesterday. It is you're continuously running to meet your targets, and instead, she's talking, she's recognizing that hurry is an ableist behavior, and going slowly, listening to the community, giving them spaces, giving them different ways in which they can approach you. And I think those were some of the things which were very, very obvious in all of the stories. The fact that all of them focused on depth rather than on numbers and on scaling, and measuring things which were non-linear. Like, how do you? It's very difficult to measure. The fact that somebody, because of the work that you're doing, they get back their dignity. They get back their confidence and feel a sense of self-worth. It is very difficult to measure that, which is why you will not find CSR working on something like this. But all of them have focused on that, and dignity, I think, has been something that almost all of them have again spoken about. So there are actually a lot of things I can talk about, but I don't think we will have time. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Shivanjali, for so deeply sharing your insights on the publication. On that note, we would like to continue hearing to the two women who have women philanthropists whose recording is there. We'll hear more about them, and we'll then come back to Anuradha and Shivanjali.
Thank you so much. I think that's wonderful. So I just have one quick follow-up question for both of you in terms of the your own philanthropic journey as both of you have been working on issues of social justice, of equality. If you were to prioritize and from your experience of philanthropy, if you were to prioritize, say, issues or areas on which you think really philanthropy needs to be more active, needs to give more effectively, do you have any thoughts around that? And any one of you, please jump in and share your thoughts. Like, what should philanthropy be focusing on, you think? Where should they be focused? Aparna, would you like to go since you're unmuted?
Okay, sure. I think that the actual sectors and causes will vary, and depending on person, I think that there's so many needs that we have, whether it's gender, whether it's climate change, whether it's mental health, education. I mean, there are so many. But what I would like to see is just philanthropy, donors and philanthropists who encourage people to take risks and to do something different, and to experiment a little bit, because I think that as you get bigger, it becomes harder to do that sometimes. Governments are not always going to experiment and take risk in the same way. So I think philanthropists can try and fund that as an approach. And I also want to say is that, there's an impression that if you're a philanthropist, you're giving away crores and you have to be really wealthy. And I really, like I said, I started off in my personal capacity, and it is a lot humbler than you might think. And I think that even whatever you're giving, whether you're giving a few lakhs, whether you're giving much more than that, I think you can really choose to have an impact in many, many different ways. You could start working with smaller organizations who would appreciate that contribution of just even a few lakhs that you might want to give. Or if you can, like I did, like I started off with a community venture, getting my building together and us making a joint contribution, and doing things in a collaborative way where you can see a multiplier impact, because you're seeing the impact of not just your giving but 5 other people giving. So I think that there are many ways to start without necessarily feeling that, oh, I've got to have like a very high net worth to be giving.
Absolutely. I think the point you make about it's the way you give actually is as important. And I think, Radhika, your chapter speaks a lot to the way you give, because of just standing together with the community that you seek to change, or that you seek to serve, if I can say. So would love you to hear your thoughts on what is that message you would like to give, or what is it that you think funders can do more effectively to change the situation of inequality and discrimination as we see it today?
I think, if you were asking me about how to prioritize philanthropy, in my experience, it's these are global figures, that there's about 1.6% of CSR funding or philanthropy actually is focused on women and children. So there is a huge lacuna, and I feel sometimes that women empowerment is such an abused word. It's something so vague and expansive that it can mean so many things and really not be effective. In my experience, because I'm working in the projects myself, a lot of you realize where the turnarounds are, what are the boomerangs, what are the projects that work, which sound great on paper but can't really take off because of real practical issues. So there's a lot of improvisation as you go along with the projects, and a lot of them are disappointing because you think they are great projects, and there are some which you begin because you feel strongly. Or in my giving you an instance, my daughter started something called Heart to Feed. And it was just to donate, used footwear. And it became such a movement that people donated thousands of footwear. Money came in from around the world. She was able to give out 8,000 pairs of shoes to the needy. So sometimes it's a great idea and people join in. And the collaborative effort, which Aparna also alludes to, is so powerful. And it's never really about the amount. It's about the intention and, to find the right purpose and pursue it with who's doing good work. In my experience, I found it better to collaborate with NGOs or organizations that are already doing work instead of trying to replicate it. I think sometimes NGOs get into an ego thing that, we're doing this and we don't want to align with anyone else, whether we fail or sail. It's our project. I think we are very conscious of the fact that we want to collaborate and be effective and reach out to a wider range of people and causes. So we work, of course, among within our institution, but we also are very happy to collaborate. And I think that's the way forward. I think communities have to build community. You must work as a community. So. And again, as to what Aparna said, that it doesn't matter what sum of money it is. We really begin our projects with very, very humble sums. It's just that I have an institution, physically present, so people can come in and see what work we are doing, and I think that's been very, very rewarding to see the people actually benefit from it firsthand.
Thank you so much. So Radhika, back to you. Just the last question before we wind up is, can you give us one message that you want the audience to take back with them around, giving for justice? Anything that you would like to share as a takeaway And the same to you, Aparna, but Radhika, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think we lead by example. I think philanthropy is unfortunately not inbuilt in India, in us Indians. As you see it in the West, we don't have it in us to give. We are very happy to, personally be there for people, but pulling out money sometimes becomes a bit of an effort for people. So, I think we have to look at ourselves as a community, as a wider circle, and I've always found that leading by example helps a lot. If we work and we inspire others, it's a great way of reaching out. I think people also need to be able to tell their own stories. I think that when you humanize the causes, when you make them relatable, when you connect people that this affects you as much as the person on the street, I think that's when we can collide as humanity. So I think and of course the children, you have to involve the next generation in it, that they must feel that sense of duty for service as well.
Thank you so much. I think it's such a feminist perspective that the personal is political, that you have to lead by doing an example. So thank you so much for bringing that in. Aparna, would love to hear your thoughts, your message to those who are going to be hearing you today.
Yeah, I think you should just start somewhere. You may not have all the answers, but just start somewhere, make a beginning, find people you trust, find people you can partner with, and believe me, you will be getting back more than you will be giving. And when I think of everything that I've gotten back, it's far more than what I've given. So just make a beginning somewhere, start, don't hesitate.
That's great.
So that was wonderful hearing about how they want to inspire many more people into philanthropy. And Shivanjali, your thoughts on that? If you have to give one message to somebody who's starting their journey in philanthropy or towards giving gender funding, what are your thoughts?
So I will actually turn it around a bit. Instead of giving someone advice on how they can start their philanthropic journey, I think I will take a step back, and what I think we need is that, and which I've spoken with you all about also, is that we need an ecosystem which supports women philanthropists. So a lot of these women, they started their journey without having an idea of how they can contribute. It took them many years to actually find their space. Can we create an ecosystem where, we reduce that time, and it's not easy to, start on a philanthropic journey on your own, because not always, you don't always have support of your family. They also don't prioritize it. It is, just something she's doing as a hobby. It is never given importance. So, for a philanthropist to have, a peer network whom they can tap into, people who can support them in their journey, with whom they can have those discussions, I think that is important, because through that you will find that not only does the work that they do get strengthened, but it will actually probably more and more women will find it easier to break. There are also glass ceilings in this, so break into this and get more engaged.
Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts, Shivanjali. And on that note, Anuradha, I will request you to just sum up what we have heard today and also your parting thoughts from the experiences that we have had so far.
So I don't know what else I can say. It's been just, I was on the interview, but listening to it, I think it was just, again, very, very inspiring. So I think 3-4 words that come to my mind as parting thoughts. One is the need to stand in solidarity. जिस तरह हम communities के साथ solidarity की बात करते हैं, I think जो भी उस issue से जुड़ा है वो philanthropic ecosystem में हो तो वो solidarity एक मुझे बहुत important लगता है. And as Shivanjali said, the need to have a peer network, because peer network होने से ही हम अपने जैसे सोचने वाले लोगों के साथ काम कर पाते हैं. तो having more philanthropists come in, share, learn from each other. Third, I think is really building a community of humility, because people on the ground who are actually dealing with issues of poverty, discrimination have so much to share, and I think teach on what can kind of improve the situation in their lives. So collaborate, show solidarity, learn together, be humble, and be open to a lot of possibilities, as Aparna was saying.
Thank you so much, Anuradha, for those thoughts. On that note, we would like to conclude this panel, and we are very, very grateful to all the philanthropists featured in the book, our author Nilima Khetan, and of course Soften team for bringing out this publication, and to Pune Lit Fest team for calling us here and giving us the opportunity to share about the publication. Of course, Shivanjali ji and Anuradha for being on the panel, and we would really, we have some hard copies of the books that we are carrying, or the publication that we are carrying. So if anybody is interested, you can just get in touch with us. The banner put up also gives the QR code to download the soft copy of the publication. So anybody interested, please scan this QR code and you can download the publication. Thank you so much for joining us today.